So while we're waiting for the other people, any questions about this idea of the cardboard cutouts? So you would keep the rights to them. You don't have to do this, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. It has other advantages. It like gives you a photo shoot with hundreds of pictures of yourself that you can use for other things, plus this use, and gives you an opportunity to visit our new videography facility in our 4-car garage. And so when I talk about that, you will actually have been there in the future. But that can't happen until the end of the month because the garage is being renovated. So the soonest that you would be doing the cutouts, that photo shoot would be toward the end of September. So any questions about the idea or strong opposition? Yeah, any impassioned feelings one way or the other about this?
We would need to schedule so that only, a few people are physically in the garage at one time, right?
Yes, yes. No, probably, I mean, yeah. So it can be done over an extended period whenever it's convenient for the student. And, there could be many different occasions. It doesn't require a lot of setup. We have lighting and camera and tripod and green screen background. And that's pretty much just there. So it's a matter of showing up, and the camera takes 3 shots a second. So that's a huge number of pictures of you. And you can decide what you want to be doing. And so, yeah. So anyway, that's how it works.
Sorry, I think I missed some of that. I have just joined.
Yes. Yeah, so what I was just saying is that for those in Edmonton who would be photographed for the cutouts in my 4-car garage converted to videography studio, we would probably schedule that over some period of time. So there would be relatively few people at any one time, like maybe 2 or 3. So the garage is quite big. So it's almost like being outside in the sense that the garage door is open. And then there's a huge air exchange, obviously, with the whole, garage door open. It's like very good air turbulence and that sort of thing. Plus, we could put. I have an air purifier, that has all the specs for killing COVID. We could also put that in the room when we were using the room for the photo shoot. I've had the thing for 2 years, and it just, my family got it for me for my office for Christmas 2018, and it seemed at the time like, well, it was a nice thing for them to do, but now, with this recent information about way that COVID may spread in the air, it really makes sense. This is exactly the kind of thing that would reduce the number of particles. They say a 99% reduction. So that's pretty good. Yeah. So I've had it in here the whole time, but just began to become more interested when they talked about the possibility of this kind of COVID spread. Okay, so what do we got? We've got 10 people. I think that's pretty good. All right, let me go to gallery view. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah. So what I suggested is that we should introduce ourselves. So my idea here is that at the very least you'd say who you are, like what you're majoring in or what program you're in, and why you took the course. And you can find over the past 9 years a lot of other students like yourself answering those 3 questions. And the other thing about it is you'll probably get to do it on Thursday and next Tuesday a little bit too, because Shawna Pandya tends to like the idea of getting to know you in this way at the start of her classes too. So, where shall we start? Devansh, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? And that will give the registered students a bit more time to think about yeah. So tell us about yourself. Yeah.
Okay, well, hi everyone, I'm Devansh, and I'm a second-year student studying immunology and infection. Other than that, I guess for this course, I'm not actually registered, but I do find it very interesting because I keep tying it back to like certain movies that we may have thought of, such as The Matrix or Transcendence, where Johnny Depp uploads his consciousness into a computer. So yeah, I just like how it ties into some things that I've thought about before.
Right, we could go to Ashley next. Ashley is a registered student in the course, but she also works up here in anatomical pathology. So we see each other in the hallway and all that kind of thing. So Ashley, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Ashley. Yeah, I am a 4th-year student in honors physiology. So I also work in AP, but I am also doing research in a obstetrics lab. So I work with placenta samples. So that's normally where I am on Tuesdays, but I'm not allowed in the lab this week. So because of that kind of working in a lab, like a research lab and a clinical lab, and working with placentas, and someone who is pretty much trying to build a placenta, like grow one outside of a uterus, is one of my prof's kind of main focuses. This course kind of falls into that like tissue engineering, future of medicine kind of thing completely. So I thought it'd be nice to, I don't know, be aware of what I should watch out for at least.
Okay, Eduardo, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a graduate student at the Department of Medicine in the Alberta Respiratory Center. What else was the question? And how I found out about this course, I was going through the U of A catalog to find a course to take, and this was the one that looked the most interesting to me. So yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Okay, good. So Nicole, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Okay, I'm in my third and last year of computer science after degree. I'm taking this course because I've taken a lot of like the AI machine learning courses in like a general sense, and then those usually are applied to like games like chess and things like that. And then I think it's a lot more interesting to see them like more of a practical sense and how these things can be used to like.
Okay, cool. Leanne, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Leanne. I'm in my 5th and final year of a BCom degree. I'm majoring in operations management. I kind of came across this course because a friend had recommended it, but it also fits kind of with what I want to do in the future, which is just seeing how we can, I don't know, engage with technology and try to shape how the future looks and how we can use this to make a positive impact on society and the community.
Okay, Joel, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Yeah, hi folks, my name is Joel. I have a degree in biological sciences, and I'm doing, I guess, an after degree in open studies, not really a program, but I actually saw this course. One of my friends posted it on Facebook, and it looked really interesting. So I decided I was going to email Dr. Solez and found out more about it, and found your videos on YouTube. I think this is it's a pretty relevant topic to be discussing and really looking at. I have some background in public health research. Actually went to the same conference with Eduardo, so that's how I know Eduardo.
Cool.
I'm really interested in health policy and health systems research, and I think going forward, if this is we're at the cusp of AI and machine learning potentially doing diagnoses for patients and potentially even taking over the roles of physicians, I think there's a need for policy, creating that sort of ethical framework and policies that would guide the work going forward. So I'm very excited about what this course has to offer, and really looking forward to learning lots from everyone here.
Great. So Rebecca, who is a medical student who actually took this course last term, but she is working closely with me in general, so she knows probably more about the course than any of the rest of you having actually taken it before. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your current perspectives and so on?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca. I'm a second-year medical student at ualberta.ca right now. Currently taking part in this course second time because I believe Kim, changes it up every year, so it's going to be different regardless, in lieu of my liver physiology lecture right now. So that's saying a lot, right? So I had my undergraduate degree in chemical engineering, and so when I first met Kim and was introduced to his course, I was really interested in the subject matter because I guess technology in medicine is highly interdisciplinary, and Kim has lots of good contacts and knowledge bases from people of all walks of life. So it's something that's really interesting, and I'm glad to see everybody, is coming from different faculties, because we need to start somewhere, and it's hard to get training, across different disciplines, but here we are.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. Okay, Kaylin Morrison. Yeah.
Hey guys, my name is Kaylin. Unlike some of you, I'm in my undergrad degree. I'm going into my third year, so I'm still pretty fresh, but I actually got interested into this course from a friend as well, like Leanne. And I'm taking my BCom in a major in marketing, and I'm also a co-op student. I got interested in this course from my friend, but also because I think that there's a huge crossover between technology and also just society in general. And so seeing how we can use things like machine learning, AI, and all the new technology that's coming up for businesses, but also to be aware of the ethical standpoints. And like Joel was saying, the policies around that too was really interesting for me.
Excellent. Okay, Khadija, do you want to tell us about yourself?
Yes, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Khadija. and I am a second year PhD student, and I'm actually at the same lab with Eduardo, so we are a colleague in the Alberta Respiratory Center. So I almost done all the required courses for my PhD degree, and I needed one more course to do. So I was looking for something different, actually, to have some different aspects and look at things in a different way. So I decided to go to do this course this semester.
Excellent. Okay, Ishita Mogi is the TA for the course, and she and I worked together in 2018, 2019. Now she's in neurosciences at the University of Calgary. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Everyone? Okay. So yeah, as Dr. Solez said, I'm starting my second year of my master's in clinical neurosciences at the U of C. I actually did this course in the fourth year of my undergrad. So I think that was, 2018. And I really enjoyed it. So I tried to stay involved in it. I helped TA the course in the 2019-2020 year while I was working with Dr. Solez in his lab. And now that everything's online, I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to get involved again and be here for classes and help TA again.
Great.
So nice to meet you all.
Well, I think you're a great group, and that's one. You may wonder where the idea of the cutouts came from, whether it was just a purely mechanical decision that, Ching Yin Wang made. No, she was so stimulated by watching videos of all of you that it seemed to her like natural outcome of what this group should do. So anyway, that was why she came up with that suggestion. Okay, so now I'm gonna try to, let's see, share a screen. All right. Share screen. Okay, PowerPoint. All right. So share that. You are screen sharing. Perfect. So let's see. So are you seeing my PowerPoint? Yes? Okay. So I think I need to go to the start of it. All right. Play from start. Okay. So you're seeing it full screen now, is that right? Okay. So enabling a Star Trek future through genetic engineering, mind uploading, and regenerative medicine. Now, what I'm about to present to you, some of it is just previews of upcoming lectures and subjects that we'll be dealing with in greater depth, but it kind of will give you a general background. So next teaching session, Shawna Pandya will be teaching you, and one of the things she'll tell you is that space is trying to kill us. We see all these great stories about the human beings as a space-faring species, but actually there are a lot of things that would interfere with that, like the fact that we're not radiation resistant. There's a lot of radiation in space, and changes in vision occur even in relatively short space flights. And so these are all things we will have to face in the future. One potential way to overcome the problem of radiation is by generating a new species of radiation resistant humans. And you'd have to be pretty confident to suggest that because it's a very controversial idea. But of course, Elon Musk is a very confident person who's already accomplished a lot of things. So this is his suggestion. So there's this water bear animal that is almost completely radio resistant, and this bacteria. Decades ago, they used to irradiate tins of meat, and they found that there were bacteria that would grow quite readily, even in these completely irradiated, high-dose irradiated tins of meat. So what Musk's idea is to take the genes from these two animals that make them radio resistant and insert that into the human genome. The result of doing that is, I think, not predictable, but it's no more radical than the idea of mind uploading. This would also be a way that we could solve this problem. So you may wonder, why is there a picture of my 7-year-old granddaughter here? Well, as some of you may know, there's a video where we talk about her future if this happens, because Ray Kurzweil says that this is going to happen and be routine and successful within 19 years. In other words, in the 2030s. And as you may know, a lot of people have their peak output in terms of written word and quoted statements from their 27th year. And if my granddaughter uploaded her consciousness to a ceramic slab or something 19 years from now, she'd never get to pronounce those famous things that people would know her for in the future, because presumably once you're a mind upload, you can just directly communicate via thoughts. You don't need words anymore. So this is something that I have a lot of videos about, and it seems to me that it is going to take 10 times as long as Ray Kurzweil says. And that then makes for a symmetrical timeline from a kidney medicine point of view. Kidney medicine basically began in 1827 with Richard Bright's book about kidney diseases. And so that's 193 years back. If you go 193 years forward, I'm saying that maybe we wouldn't need kidneys anymore because everybody will be uploading their consciousness to inorganic substrates in 193 years. And the truth may lie somewhere in between, but I would point out to you that 19 years is within all of our lifetimes and very soon. And so it is interesting that some people think all these big changes in human society will occur that quickly. Finally, regenerative medicine, if you think about flying in space, it's not convenient to come back and get something you forgot, like a body part or something. So if you have an organ fail, the only way to replace it really is to take your existing cells and grow up a new organ. And you may say, well, can we really do that? Well, the answer is yes, we can. But right now we have a hard time stopping that growth so that tumors don't form, even malignant tumors. So it isn't just a matter of can we do it, but can we stop it when it gets to complete normal organs, so it's not going on to do other things that we don't want. So there are problems both sides of can we create the complete organ in the time that we would need it in these circumstances in space flight, and can we somehow control the possibility that may create tumors that we don't want. Now, these areas of inquiry in science have changed a lot in the past 4 years. In 2015, there was a special session on regenerative medicine at the Cutting Edge of Transplantation meeting, which is in the spring in the transplant community. And I was virtually the only one there. Everybody else looked at the program and said, hey, it's a nice day and I'm going sightseeing. And I'm here with my family and boy, you know, it's wonderful that they have this crazy session on regenerative medicine on a day when the weather is so perfect for sightseeing. So in a session planned for like 250 people, they had about 5 people. And it was very good session, and I felt very honored to be in such intimate contact with the people presenting. But it shows you how deeply unpopular these ideas were in 2015. 2016, I started talking about this and trying to make people feel guilty and like there's something wrong with this picture. And by 2017, for whatever reason, regenerative medicine was becoming more mainstream within medicine. And the Canadian Society of Transplantation meeting in 2017 was joint with a Cell Therapy Regenerative Medicine Society meeting, and it worked very well, and it seemed logical, and it didn't seem forced or strained. And the meeting that I'm responsible for, the BAMF Transplant Pathology meeting, our latest meeting in 2019 in Pittsburgh, the pre-meeting, the special day of one focused subject that starts the meeting was devoted to regenerative medicine, tissue engineering, pathology. So these things are becoming more real and more mainstream in medicine. And the politics are really very interesting. And so probably in this group, in this audience, you would vary in your use of social media, just like most other groups of human beings do. Some of you are on Facebook a lot and some not at all, and so on. So single-cell transcriptomics, the Human Cell Atlas project, which Aviv Regev is in charge of, it was almost totally born in terms of its promotion on social media. And it's been funded by all the usual funding for science, but plus Chan Zuckerberg, which is money from Facebook. And quite honestly, if you were not on Facebook, you knew nothing about this until about 2019, even though it is a very important part of regenerative medicine and medicine of the future. So just to kind of oversimplify things, in the past, people have done genomics on chunks of tissue with all different kinds of cells and come to conclusions, whereas a much more precise way is to do it cell by cell, and that's what this allows. So what do I mean by like politics and prejudice against this? So for the 2018 plenary session at the ASN, I probably had some part to play in the fact that they asked Aviv Regev to present in this plenary session. But in all the promotion for that meeting, they never gave the title of her talk. It was just like this. You see 4 plenary speakers, 3 titles, they never. And even when she presented her talk, they didn't allow her to use the phrase that represents the entity that she's been running for 4 years, the Human Cell Atlas project. So that wasn't in the title of her talk. Anyway, I don't know what your own personal familiarity with this area is. There are three terms here: regenerative medicine, tissue engineering, and cell therapy. That they are overlapping in their meaning. And you can see that cell therapy is becoming more popular with time. Tissue engineering seems to be going down in popularity, and regenerative medicine as a term or search term has remained more or less stable. So here is Sushita and me meeting with Aviv Regev. That was lots of fun, and we accomplished a lot in about 90 seconds of encounter. Okay, now you may wonder, those of you without a scientific or medical background, what you're responsible for. And the idea in these two slides is one of the things you are responsible for, because it's the big message here, that as wonderful as transplantation is, it only reaches 10% of people who need a transplanted organ. So the rest basically die waiting. It may take a long time, but it's also not a very pleasant way to live. So if you receive a renal transplant, your quality of life is much, much higher than if you're maintained on hemodialysis. So the potential to provide organs for everyone, and I really mean everyone in every country, you know, there could be enough organs for everybody on Earth who needs organ replacement. Worldwide, 1.4 million people a year are in need of transplantation for end-stage organ failure. So you could save over 1 million people annually by having completely implemented regenerative medicine replacement of organs. Okay, and it's working pretty well for simpler organs, organs like the bladder. The trachea is interesting. There is a dreadful history of patient deaths not being reported in trachea transplants where you know it's regenerative medicine produced trachea. So that's one of the big scandals in the area. And indeed, one of the reasons this area is a bit hard to teach is that it is the source of our major hope for the future in medicine in general. That's what regenerative medicine and tissue engineering is. But it is also, for the FDA and for Health Protection Canada and so on, the greatest problem that they have is like stem cell tourism, stem cell hype, stem cell fraud, people claiming to be giving stem cell-based therapies that are actually giving nothing or giving something harmful. So you may go to one of these practitioners thinking you're going to get a miraculous cure for what is ailing you, and instead you end up with, you know, malignant tumors or, you know, disfiguring calcifications, all sorts of terrible things that can happen. So it's a very complicated area. And so it's kind of like the internet itself, right? Somebody asks you, well, is the internet good or bad? You say it's both. It's both good and bad. It seems to reflect all features of human activity. And I'm afraid that the stem cell the regenerative medicine area is also a bit like that it is full of promise. It's also full of fraud and misstatement and overhyping. And so it's very complicated from that point of view. You may think that because we're so far north, in the days of wall maps, I'm sure none of you have a wall map. You may not even know somebody who has a wall map, but in previous eras, it was a thing. People had wall maps. And wall maps of the United States always included all the major cities of Canada except for Edmonton, because we're just a bit farther north. So in that sense, we were off the edge of the known world for a lot of people. And yet, important things still happen here. So James Shapiro is one of the main investigators in the ViaCyte trial that is using pancreatic progenitor cells to treat type 1 diabetes, and that's happening right here. The other person who is right here is Timothy Caulfield. And many of you may know of him because he's one of the most popular lecturers, speakers in the entire university. And he studies celebrity and celebrity impact on health. And he's a bit of a celebrity himself, having spent so much time with celebrities and so on. He has a book, many books, but Is Gwyneth Paltrow Wrong About Everything? So anyway, he's a very entertaining speaker. He runs the Health Law Center, and they do, I'm just going to go through this quickly, but you'll just get an idea what some of these topics are. They're very close to kind of social media, but they're important questions of how celebrity and medicine impact each other. From Kim Kardashian to Dr. Oz, future relevance of popular culture in our health and health policy. I really think he's the best person in the world in this area, and it's really cool that he's right here at the University of Alberta. So for those of you who are interested, I would urge you to look into a lot more what the Health Law Center is doing. Athletes and unproven stem cell therapies. And all of you may think, well, I would never fall for something like that, but almost all of you would, because you either have a famous film star or actor or actress or sports star. And if your most favorite celebrity or sports star goes to some foreign country and gets stem cell therapy and comes back saying, it's so great, then you are very likely, despite your excellent critical appraisal of things, that you're always making the right decision. You may decide to follow that person's footsteps. So none of us are really immune to this celebrity and sports star influence. So, okay. And in the particular areas of interest to me, kidney medicine and transplantation, they are less popular by far than they were when my career began in the 60s and 70s. All the best and the brightest people went into those fields, and it was really, really cool. And they would talk at parties about, how like transplant surgeons had a special spring in their step, so you could tell them this by looking at them. And they were so proud of what they were, and it's not quite that good anymore. Kidney medicine is one of the least popular specialties, and similarly, transplantation has lost its luster. And regenerative medicine could bring all of that back. so we can reverse those trends. And because of this, when the singularity happens, it's possible that nephrologists and renal pathologists may be the only people still employed. I'm really just kidding about that, but I do think that the future holds great promise in those areas. If you think about stem cell creation of a kidney, it's harder than any other complex organ because all the cell types have to be in proper sequence, that you can't just randomly keep the cells of the kidney alive and hope that it's going to do something useful. It has to have, you know, filtration and then different segments of the tubule and so on. So it really is the moonshot. It's the hardest thing to make happen in regenerative medicine. Okay, this is the thing that I'm known for, and you probably think I'm going to slow down and spend a lot of time on this, but this is like too detailed for you guys, so you can look at it some other time. But there is one burning question you may want to know, which is this thing I created, the BAMP classification. It's all well and good to know what I think about it. Who cares, right? But what do young people in the field? So Dr. Adam has said that BAMP lesion scoring gives you the imprimatur of an educated transplant pathologist. It means you know what you're doing. Anyway, so I won't go through the rest of this because you're not trained in kidney histopathology and so on. So you're free to look at these slides, but you do not have, this is not going to be on the exam. All right, so the world is changing rapidly, and so we need to think about a future where there really will be stem cell generated organs. There's stem cell generated tissues right now, bone, cartilage, skin, that's quite easily done. And simpler organs like the bladder and so on. Do Canadians want this? Yes, indeed, Canadians do want this. The Canadians have quite strong support for radical life extension resulting from regenerative medicine. And it's kind of like if you say, well, if you apply the technological singularity to medicine, what do you get? Well, it really is regenerative medicine. That's what you get. So it's kind of like this is the biological equivalent of what happens at the singularity. So in 2035, 2045, we should have stem cell created organs of all types. Okay, as I said, I'm going past these things because they really require more of a science background than most of you have. Okay, the future and all that jazz. This is, as I mentioned before, taking important but unpopular subjects in science and incorporating them into poetry and music and entertaining people for an evening and tricking them into learning about these things through poetry and music. So Eduardo had suggested that maybe we could make this happen this term. And indeed, that is theoretically possible if we can find a venue. So what would the venue be? It would be somewhere where, probably outside, where you can legally do musical performance, like somebody who has an acreage out of town, where they are happy to have this on their land, and so on. So I'm not pushing it particularly hard. I just think it would be cool if you guys can figure out a way that we could do this. Mallory Chipman has said that her graduate program doesn't begin until early October. So we have about a month during which she could easily do this if we can find a place to do it. And we already have the songs and the poetry. We just need a place to do it. So anyway, I leave that with you as a challenge. Now, getting back to Aviv Regev and talking about self-sufficiency and like promotion, when Nishita and I talked to Aviv, we mentioned that we could help promote the Human Cell Atlas through these musical performances. Aviv seemed to think she had her own plan for this, and indeed she did. Within a very short time after that, she went on NPR podcast, which is listened to by millions of people, talking about the Human Cell Atlas. And I think she did indeed reach a large number of people, and you can listen to that yourself. Okay, the second part of this talk then is, when will the current Wild West period end, and what should we do in the meantime in terms of regenerative medicine? So there's an analogy between the start of clinical transplantation and the start of clinical regenerative medicine. So transplantation went through a long period where it was so controversial that a lot of physicians believed it should be shut down entirely. We should stop doing it. And it just basically was not working well enough, either in terms of outcomes of patients or the number of patients who were receiving successful transplants, no matter how you looked at it. What made the difference was cyclosporin in 1983. And this overlaps with the beginning of my career and sort of the work that preceded the BAMP classification. So I was looking at protocol biopsies in cyclosporin treated patients beginning in 1983. And that was very important data that then led me to start the BAMP classification in 91. But before cyclosporin, transplantation really was controversial, questionable, and had most unsatisfactory outcomes. So you could imagine that with exponential change, that maybe with regenerative medicine, it won't take 30 years like it did with. So there was this 30-year kind of Wild West period in transplantation where transplants were being carried out, but the outcomes were really quite poor. So one could hope that it might go faster this time. It's difficult to know where to draw the line in the sand. So what do you really need to make a transplant successful? If you're making organs from stem cells, do those organs have to have all the cell types? So traditionally, it's been taught that the kidney has 26 cell types. We believe that with Human Cell Atlas, more precise accounting for what all the cells are, it will probably get to 52, in other words, twice that number. And so do you need all the normal cell types in a transplanted organ in order to justify transplanting it? Probably not. Even a kidney that just did some of the things that a kidney does and not all of them, like it may not make renin, it may not make renal erythropoietic factor, so maybe it wouldn't contribute in that way, but could still filter waste and so on. But this general idea is what I have called tissue engineering pathology. In other words, analyzing the stem cell generated organ that you've made and then deciding whether it would represent a net benefit to the patient or not. And I've proposed that there would be then a BAMP classification of tissue engineering pathology. So yeah, these are kind of too detailed science for you, I think. Yeah, so we're now, believe it or not, coming to the end. So anyway, originally, we had a very primitive beginning in the BAMF meetings. We had mule deer poking their heads into the meeting rooms. Another thing we had was people bringing their children to the meetings. And those two worked well. The kids who were sitting there bored out of their mind by this adult discussion about stuff, when the mule deer came to the door, it really, it made it a successful day for the kids who happened to be there. Anyway, now we have real data complexity, but outcomes should be very good for patients. So we've come a long way. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I know when you looked at those 73 slides, you thought, oh no, this could be so long and we'll never get finished and this is terrible. But anyway, we are done now. So I'm going to stop sharing and I will take your questions or comments or whatever you may be. Yeah, and we have 27 minutes before the end of the class period. So let me know your thoughts. It doesn't have to be thoughts on the lecture. If you're sitting here thinking, well, you know, I've got these very emotional comments on the cutouts, and I want to talk more about the cutouts. We could also do that because that is related to the course. What the cutouts will be is a fantastic manifestation, right? Human manifestation of like the influence of this course, the people taking this course, which is COVID resistant, right? It's like made for these times. So anyway, that's what the cutouts will be. So you can discuss that. You can discuss anything related to the course up until now. So the last time I'm doing the primary teaching for a while. Shawna Pandya has a series of lectures now, and then we have a combined lecture with very exciting people all speaking in the same teaching session. And then David Pierce, who started transhumanism, one of the founders of transhumanism, and loves talking to students. So the complete opposite of Marcus Hutter, who hated talking to you guys. David Pierce loves talking to U of A students. So you have that to look forward to and a whole lot of other good stuff after that. Okay, any questions, comments?
I do have a question, and I don't know if it's a little too complicated for the scope of this course, but what are the requirements for a transplant, and why would one be given and why would one not be given?
Yeah, so in the current system, there are waiting lists, right? So, and being really far down on the waiting list may mean that it would take years for you to get the transplant. And having kidney failure, or liver failure, or heart failure carries a mortality of a substantial likelihood that you may die every year. So basically, a lot of people die waiting. Sometimes there are situations where if an organ comes up that is genetically identical to you or very close, you may be suddenly bumped up so that even though you're way down in the waiting list, they may bump you up because such a weird genetic, so you're the only person on the planet who happens to suit that particular organ. Then, so there's always a chance of something like really exciting happening to where suddenly an organ becomes, you know, available to you. So it's a little bit complicated. There are also shared exchange where, like, somebody associated with you donates an organ, then that can increase the likelihood of you receiving one. And anyway, you can imagine there are all sorts of like legitimate ways to try to speed up the process. And also in other countries, there are all sorts of horrific things, like in China, it's quite easy to get organs from executed prisoners, and that's obviously very, very unpleasant, and from people who are discriminated against in Chinese society. And they're it's a bit, so in that way, transplantation also has a kind of unpleasant dark side if you look at it worldwide. Maybe that's more detailed answer to your question that you wanted, but it isn't simple. The answer to your question isn't simple.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Hi, I have a question here.
Yeah.
So I am actually thinking about the project we will be doing. So is there a point where we'll be like guided to begin, and we will have instructions on how to begin, or we can just, based on what we are getting in lectures, we can at any point we are feeling comfortable to move to begin thinking about our projects and working in them would be possible. Like I'm just thinking about this, like, because I know for some of us maybe they have some background. For me, actually have no background about any of these like topics, and this would maybe take them longer to develop an idea to begin. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah. So yeah, you can decide on your project at a very early point. You can propose it to me at a very early point. There is nothing that keeps you from starting work on it right now. And so I guess the other thing to tell you is it may end up being like the most enjoyable thing you've ever done, and sort of very satisfying. So it may then continue on after the course and be something that you keep on working on for a long time. So I mean, you can send me ideas about things that you'd like to do. You can also look at our previous videos and see if there's somebody else that you'd like to have advise you about this. And yeah, so we have had a lot of really cool people teaching in the course, and you could approach any of them for advice on your project. The idea isn't that they're going to do the work for you, but that they can help you make your project something manageable and satisfying for the audience. In other words, find something that is bounded in such a way that you can talk about it within 20 minutes. You can write about it in a 10-page paper, but it's still very interesting and satisfying. So if you have a general idea about what you want to do, this mentor person can help you sharpen up those ideas.
Yeah. I mean, the thing, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, the thing to tell you is that some of our most popular lecturers are, teaching other things and popular with a lot of people. And so they reach periods of time when, their email inbox just looks overwhelming. And so I can't guarantee you that whoever you approach will necessarily respond, but it doesn't hurt if you have more than one person helping you, so you can approach more than one person. And I can always be your sort of, default mentor if you want to use me, or if you can't find anyone else. So yeah, but you don't have to have a mentor at all if you feel very confident about the subject that you're picking, or yeah. So it's just there to help you. It's a mechanism that we've set up because the course is in theory open to everybody. And so some people do need more help in sort of figuring out how they would go about choosing a topic and working on it.
Yeah, I mean, because basically I have no idea, you know, if there's some keywords to search for to know what has been done before, where should you begin? Like, you mean you don't want to have an idea, then suddenly found it was already somewhere, and there is a, you know, you feel like, I mean, that's the thing, to have an idea of where to begin, actually, like where to what to look for. And
but I don't think you have to do something nobody's done before. So one example of this, it is a fairly recent example. You can find that there's a student who wrote about the future of war. And the reason she did that is she heard me talking, and I have been talking over and over about this other student who wrote about the future of war, and then went to a children's playground on a windy day and shot this absolutely mesmerizing video of these cute kids playing in the swings and so on, while he was talking about these horrific weapons of the future. And so she decided, I was talking about how cool that was, that she would try to do exactly the same thing again, but in a somewhat different way. So she found the most appealing, like just from a marketing point of view, the most appealing PowerPoint template, like the colors and the art there just draw you in like nobody's business, like the most beautiful PowerPoint you've ever seen, and use that to then talk about the future of war. And it was very, you know, effective. The thing is about that subject is I had another experience. So there's a good friend of mine that some of you may know in the tech world, Nicola Danlayoff. And when he went to Singularity University, I paid for his air ticket. He was an impoverished scientist, and he got the opportunity to go. I paid for his air ticket. You're all thinking, oh, Dr. Solez, so great. But his history is that he had worked in Bulgaria, and he was a sort of science of war expert and history of war and so on. So trying to cross the US border with a plane ticket that somebody else paid for, and this history of being this war expert. So the guy who held his future in his hands, this, you know, guy at the border representing US entry, said, well, you know, it's all up to me. I hold your fate in your, and I'm telling you, you're not getting into the US. But 6 hours later, the shift changed. Somebody else was in charge, and they just whisked it right through. Still, it was a very traumatizing thing. So I don't necessarily recommend that subject, but you can choose a subject somebody else has used before. It does not have to be the first time that anyone has used that subject. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions?
Ashley asked on the group chat if the human cell atlas was related to the protein atlas.
No.
And yeah, we found that they are different.
And so what the reason that there was so much resistance to that phrase, part of it's purely corporate and greedy companies and stuff, like the, you know, investment in bulk transcriptomics was enormous. So it was obvious that single cell transcriptomics was greatly superior, and therefore the people who were pushing bulk transcriptomics were opposed to ever having this phrase out there. But also, like the Protein Atlas people thought that they had cornered the market in the word atlas, right? And when one said the word atlas, you would think protein atlas, right? Not this single cell genomics thing. So there were also scientific reasons why other scientists were also opposed. So it's very interesting politics. Yeah. Other questions? So Devansh is helping me toward the goal of getting a new Sony Ibo robotic dog. You may know that they're much cuter and more capable than they used to be, and that they are not sold in Canada, but researchers who are doing research using the dog can import them. And so, yeah, we're going to figure out how to do that. So sometime soon, they will be in a teaching session and be way cooler than the Sony Ibo robotic dogs you're seeing from previous years. So that is on the agenda for the future of this term of the course. I'm happy to tell you.
I have a question about policy.
Yes.
So how do you think many of these future policies in regenerative medicine and maybe mind uploading down the road will be developed? Will it be a collective effort from academia or from governments, or a hybrid between several, I don't know, entities, the United Nations, or who is going to decide how to regulate all of these advancements and who gets them?
Well, there is no standard one-size-fits-all answer to that. For instance, in nanotechnology, you would be aware that there are at least putative things that, you could wipe out the human race with gray goo and other things in nanotech, right? So compare nanotechnology to medicine. There is no self-policing kind of activity within nanotech. Absolutely none. So I guess it will be kind of like, the Food and Drug Administration began after a massive poisoning of people in the US with ethylene glycol. So ethylene glycol substituted for the usual more expensive vehicle in drugs, and that's how the FDA began. So in these areas that are completely unregulated, like nanotech now, it may take some horrific accident or something horrible happening before there is regulation put in place. And it's hard to know exactly what needs regulation and what doesn't. Like, people are advocating regulation in AI. What does that mean exactly? Like trying to slow down something that is going to benefit us all, because general artificial intelligence and so on will be able to solve a lot of the problems that human minds can't solve, right? That is going to happen. So if we can get general artificial intelligence to be on our side, to be sort of working to help humans, then, you know, advancing them that as quickly as possible will benefit us all, right? So it is true that there's a danger there, but it's rather hard to figure out, so what should we do? Should we slow it down? Should we speed it up? What should we do, right? So this is not a simple area, and there aren't really easy answers. There have been petitions, for instance, about killer drones, autonomous killer drones. I'm sure you don't like that idea, that be no human in the loop, a drone that just goes around killing people that need killing, right? So there are, you know, petitions to outlaw that. But if you think about the world as it is now, countries do not agree enough with each other, right? There would always be some parts of the world that wouldn't be signatories to something like that and would do whatever the heck they wanted. And then there's the idea of, you know, pirate ship kind of things, you know, labs on ships that are in international waters and are not really governed by any government. For those of you interested in government systems, then, I mean, part of what Marcus Hutter's slide set was saying was maybe we need a single world government with real teeth and so on that can make, you know, decisions for the whole world. Maybe we will eventually have something like that. Other questions? Yeah.
To add that, because I know that like genetic manipulation of humans or embryos like isn't really allowed almost worldwide, I think, but there was that one doctor that went through with it anyways. So is that mostly just like a issue in that country? Because it seems like it's a worldwide thing that we all agreed that we're just not going to do that until we figure stuff out, and then they already did it. So I guess that's kind of a weird like middle ground of it.
Yeah, well, there's the Assimilar conferences, right? I forget the details, but in the early period of genetic engineering research, I think there were conferences that tried to come up with guidelines. But like you can imagine two things about China. One is that they wouldn't necessarily follow the rules other countries put in place. And so the doctors who did the human genetic, the CRISPR-Cas9 alteration was supposed to make the individual HIV resistant, but you know, probably did other things as well. That scientist, I think, went to jail, and you know, so bad things happened. In that sense, the system worked. He did something wrong, and he was punished. But yeah, it's complicated. And it would be one situation if we really knew what was going on, but there's also this huge disinformation, you know, problem that we have of not really always getting accurate news about things, and that includes accurate news about science. So, and science as general thing to search about, it's become less and less popular during the COVID epidemic. It's hard to know, you know, those two things. Fewer people are searching for things related to relationships with other humans and just relationships in general, and fewer people searching for science. And it's continuing to go down, and it looks like there's no rebound thus far. So, yeah, I mean, we can ask these questions in a general sense, but we can also ask them in the COVID context. You know, how has human decision-making changed? So in the course last term, I was aware of a video where this person said that suddenly the whole world is in favor of safety, helping others, and truthfulness, trustworthiness. So it was all well and good that he postulated this is the way the whole world is changing. But actually, if you look at Google Trends, none of those things show any trend upwards in terms of popularity as search terms. So I think he was just speculating. And he was also saying that internet influencers, these people making money off, cute YouTube videos and so on, that was going away entirely. It hasn't. That's still a thing, even in the COVID epidemic. So, yeah, I don't know. But we need the best minds working on this stuff, right? And like regulation and how these things should be regulated. So you seem to be, Eduardo, asking how these things would be regulated, but why not ask how they should be regulated, and propose, like you can make a self-fulfilling prophecy. If your description of how they should be regulated is better than anyone else's, then it will capture the imagination of other people, and it could eventually find its way into law. So
maybe we could use artificial intelligence to help guide that decision.
Yes.
Work collectively.
Sure. Yes. Certainly. Yeah. We could. Okay, so 1 minute left. Anything else you want to do? Why don't I look at chat to see if I've missed some big thing? Yeah. Yeah, the Human Cell Atlas, I tried to become part of that project, and for whatever reason, I didn't really succeed. But the other thing that was interesting is there are very few people doing videos about that project except the people in the project. So I was practically the only person doing videos about it who was not a part of the project. And Ishita and I did a lot of videos about that and so on. So anyway, that's just an interesting part of science. The European pathology meetings in 2019, we was this huge exhibit area, and we all went to all the big exhibits and said, who is the thought leader here? And then we told them this scenario that the phrases and topics that seem directly tied to the future of medicine seem to be specifically excluded from major meeting programs. And these thought leaders said, yeah, it may surprise you, but there are always people opposed to progress in science and medicine. I mean, it just for various reasons doesn't serve their interests. So that factor is always out there. There are always people doing that. We don't think about that, but it's certainly there. So he was not surprised, this person that we talked to, the thought leader at the biggest booth. Okay, any other things you want to discuss? Okay, we'll see you on Thursday for Shawna Pandya's teaching session. Thank you very much for today. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye.